Campaigning in the 18th Lok Sabha is finally over. We are waiting for the exit polls to come out. To reflect on this long, arduous, hot campaign, we're joined by former Finance and Home Minister and the man who drafted the Congress's manifesto. P. Chidambaram now joins us live from Chennai. Mr. Chidambaram, welcome and thank you for your time. You've been part of so many elections, you've seen so much of the ups and downs of Indian politics. When you look back at this particular campaign, what stood out for you as the high point? What was for you the low point of this long election campaign, Mr. Chidambaram? Let's start from there.
The three things that stood out as far as I'm concerned. Firstly, the ruling party, the BJP, could not set the narrative in this election. They failed. They tried this and they tried that, but they failed to set the narrative. The second thing is the opposition, although it is an alliance of several parties, was unusually aggressive and assertive. I think they awakened the fighting impulses and instincts of a large number of cadres, especially the Congress cadres, and the opposition put up a stiff fight in even in states where they thought that it was thought that the BJP will have an easy walkover. The third thing is the amount of hate speeches, the complete polarizing, divisive speeches, starting from the Honorable Prime Minister. I mean, that was the lower point of the election. That the Prime Minister should, after April 21, indulge in speech after speech, which contained hate, divisiveness, and polarization.
Okay, sir, I want to take you through some of the promises made by the Congress party during this campaign. And you've been finance minister thrice over, you presented 9 budgets, and try and understand from you the economic rationale behind those promises, why you think these are important, and most importantly, where the money will come from. I'll start with the broad headline number. So there are various economists who've looked at the aggregate cost to the promises made by the Congress party, and their calculation is that if all of these were to be implemented in the way that you're saying you will, the fiscal deficit of this country will go up from 5.1% of GDP, which is projected under the current BJP government, to between 7 to 8.5% of the GDP, which could be fiscally ruinous. So how are you responding to all those people who were your constituency when you were finance minister, very worried about the country's finances, not wanting governments to spend more than they're earning, saying that the fiscal deficit could go up to as much as 8% if all the promises you've made in your manifesto are implemented, Mr. Chidambaram?
Absolutely wrong. These promises have to be implemented over a period of 5 years, and during those 5 years, the GDP will not be constant. The GDP will also grow. It will grow at a brisk rate, and the GDP will be in nominal terms. It will grow at a very fast rate, something like 12-13% a year. So please don't forget that. Secondly, the promises have to be implemented over a period of 5 years. It is not as though all the promises have to be implemented on day one. Number 3, the promises have to be rolled out, the numbers verified. We have said so, even as far as the poor are concerned. The promise of 1 lakh a year for the poor will be rolled out. There will be verification of the numbers. There will be an evaluation of the program, and corrections will be made as we go along. Therefore, don't create this fear that the fiscal deficit will pierce all ceilings. We are very, very conscious. In fact, the FRBM was our law, and we were very conscious about sticking to the fiscal deficit. When the fiscal deficit went out of control Thanks to the international financial crisis, we brought it under control. When the fiscal deficit went out of control, thanks to the taper tantrum, we brought it back under control. So don't worry about the fiscal deficit. We are very conscious about the limits imposed by the FRBM, and we will make every effort to stick to the FRBM.
Sure, but the impulse has been a fiscally conservative impulse. I want to show you just a brief snatch of some of the comments made during the campaign trail and get your reactions on what you make of this kind of campaign rhetoric. Let's listen to Rahul Gandhi.
आपको बेरोजगार बनाया, 30 लाख सरकारी नौकरियां इंडिया गठबंधन के आते ही आपके हवाले कर देंगे। बेरोजगार युवाओं के बैंक अकाउंट में, गर्मी है काफी, बेरोजगार युवाओं के बैंक अकाउंट में, बेरोजगार युवाओं के बैंक अकाउंट में महीने के 8,500 रुपए, साल के 1 लाख रुपए खटाखट खटाखट खटाखट। ये मीडिया वाले कहेंगे जब हम पैसा देंगे, मीडिया वाले कहेंगे देखो देखो ये गरीबों की आदत बिगाड़ रहे हैं। और मैं कहूंगा ज्यादा बोलोगे ना, अभी 1 लाख रुपए साल का दे रहे हैं, 2 लाख कर देंगे, चुप हो जाओ। अगर आप गरीबी रेखा के नीचे हो, आपके बैंक अकाउंट में हर साल 1 लाख रुपया, 8,500 रुपया महीने का खटाखट 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 आता रहेगा। और एक झटके से हिंदुस्तान से हम गरीबी को मिटा देंगे।
Promise made by Rahul Gandhi is that 1 lakh rupees per year to every poor Indian family. There are 400 million households in India. Even if we take just 10%, which is a conservative estimate, just 10% of these households, if they're classified as poor, that's 4 lakh crore rupees. And somewhere in the campaign he says, if 1 lakh is not enough, I'll increase it to 2 lakh rupees, khatakat, khatakat, khatakat. And if that happens, then the bill goes up, khatakat, 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 to 8 lakh crore rupees. The government's revenues were 30 lakh crore rupees. That's the estimate for FY25, which means 1/4 of the money gets spent, khatakat, 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 just on this one promise. How do you look at this, Mr. Chidambaram?
According to the Niti Aayog, there are 11% of Indian families are poor. According to the CEO of Niti Aayog, it was 5% of families are poor. So we will do an enumeration of poor families. Therefore, there has to be criteria will be laid down. Poverty will be defined. The poor families will be counted. The poor families will be enumerated. And then it will be rolled out over a period of time after verification. You are simply assuming that on day one, X number of crores will be rolled out. An election promise is intended to be implemented. No, it's not a boast. When we said we will write off the agricultural loans, I'm sure many commentators, many economists, including perhaps some of your economists, laughed at us. But eventually, did we not write off about 60,000 crore of agricultural loan? Therefore, it's not impossible. When we rolled out the NFSAI, the National Food Security Act, the criticism of these learned economists, and I don't question their learning, that there is not enough food in this country to have a NFSAI, National Food Security Act, which covers 65% of the population. But it is under the same NFSA, National Food Security Act, that Mr. Modi's government is giving 5 kilograms of grain every day, every month per capita to 80 crore people. So please don't think that we have not done our homework. We have done our homework, we have done our math, and when we are in power, we'll roll out these schemes. At that time, you can criticize, hold your criticism for the time being.
So for a moment, it's absolutely correct that we can't quarrel over the estimated expenditure on this promise because we don't know how many people you'll classify as poor. and you're saying it doesn't need to be implemented on day one. But I want to draw you into the philosophy behind this promise. Now, the Modi government's premise economically is that we don't want to give handouts, doles to these people. We want to create employment opportunities which are self-sustaining, so that it's not as if you just keep putting money into people's accounts that can potentially lead to societies and people becoming lazy. You want to create employment so they go out, earn their living, and that's how they make money. The charge, philosophically, I'm not on the quantum of the expenditure, just philosophically, the difference is you're saying just give the money, khatakat into people's bank accounts. How do you look at that, sir?
You are again making a speech. Please ask a question. What is the 5 kilogram per capita per month which is given to 80 crore people? Is it a freebie or not? Why did you not criticize that? Why did you not criticize that freebie as a waste of food, waste of grain? Therefore, don't become an advocate of the government's point of view. Allow us to implement our promise. If we don't implement our promise, hold us to account.
Sir, I'm saying leave the government and the opposition on the side. I have a fair sense of your economic views, and doles are not something you've typically been big on, especially when you were finance minister. I'm saying the philosophy of giving people money in their bank accounts. Do you think that is right? 8,500, the citizen does no work, he gets money in his bank account. Is that even right? Shouldn't the focus philosophically be on creating self-sustaining employment opportunities instead?
This is the point of view of the rich and the upper middle class. Please understand that there are poor in this country. This government has brainwashed most people in the last 10 years that there are no poor people in this country. Now, what about the 6,000 rupees per year that he gives to farmers? Is that not a freebie or not? I've given you 2 freebies of this government. 6,000 rupees per farmer per year. 5 kilograms per capita per month to 80 crore people. Those are freebies. When did you question that freebie? When did you ask the government to account for that before the program was implemented? The program is being implemented today. The numbers have come down. The number of farmers has come down sharply. I don't know, unless an audit is done of the free grain program, I don't know exactly how many of the 80 crore are getting it or not getting it. Therefore, allow a government to implement a program, then hold it to account. We are not even in power. We have not fleshed out the program. We have not rolled out a scheme. We have not presented to the parliament. We have not made a budget allocation. And you are asking us to explain and justify every detail of that. I don't remember you are asking Mr. Narendra Modi's government of every detail of the Kisan Samman program or every detail of the free grain program.
Mr. Chidambaram, with respect, you're putting on your lawyer's hat to respond to a financial question. You cited the example of a transfer of 6,000 rupees per year to farmers. I was questioning you about a promise of 8,500 rupees to poor households every month. 8,500 rupees every month versus 6,000 rupees per year for these farmers. So can it be said that you're responding like a lawyer to a question about finances? Is it you're saying that we aren't in power and therefore it doesn't matter? Is it because you aren't in power, therefore you think, okay, we can make these promises, it'll only be a headache if we come to power, till then we don't really need to find the maths and do the numbers?
Can I turn around and say you're putting in your journalistic act and questioning my argument? Now, what is the basis of your statement that we don't have money or this India will not have money? The first charge on the government's funds is for the poor. Let me repeat that. The first charge must be on poor. What about the tax cut that the Modi government gave to the corporate sector? In 1 year, the first year, it was 1,65,000 crore. Today, that 1,65,000 crore must have multiplied several times, and the cumulative impact of the tax cut to the corporate sector must be close to 10 lakh crore. What about the bad loans that were written off by the banks? Today, the finance minister has said that 32% is the recovery rate in the IBC. If 32% is the recovery rate, what about the remaining 68%? That is banks' money, banks' credit, which was written off. Therefore, let's calculate all that. When did you question, I ask you, when did your channel or you question the 32% recovery rate in IBC? When did you question the bad loans being written off? When did you question the tax rate cut from 30% to 22%?
So is this in some ways harking back to the days of the early 70s where Indira Gandhi's speech at that time was of a welfare state? I ask because there is a particular stage in the economic evolution of a country where governments can afford to spend more on welfare. And that's usually when per capita incomes are higher, where the country is more developed and has moved further along the economic growth curve. Are we now taking on these loads or promising to take on these loads at a stage where India isn't really as far along the economic growth curve as some of the countries which are very welfarist in their agenda, like countries in Europe are?
Please understand, we are no longer in the 3% growth a year phase. We are no longer in the 5% growth phase. We are now, I believe, firmly in a 7% to 8% growth phase, and we can bump it up to over 9%. 3 years under the UPA, growth was 9% in constant terms. So if we are growing at 7% and 8%, surely we must be able to afford more funds for the poor. Please remember what Thomas Piketty and the World Inequality Lab said. India is more unequal. There is greater inequality in India today since 1922. In 100 years, we have not seen this inequality.
You were saying that we weren't asking tough enough questions to the government. I hope you saw that I asked this question to the Prime Minister, and there was a lot of debate around the issue of inequality after that question was asked. But that's a different matter, Mr. Chidambaram. Before I wrap up, you know, when you're making the manifesto, do you get a feeling that this is a manifesto of an alliance of a party that is likely to come to power? Or is this the manifesto of a party that's made these promises in the hope of being in power at some future day and trying to just put the government in the dock for the moment? Are you fighting to win, you think? Or are you fighting to show that you could put up a better fight than last time?
Certainly not. When we wrote our manifesto, it was with a full sense of responsibility that the Congress will be at the helm of government in 2024. Why don't we discuss the BJP's manifesto? Nobody talks about it. Well, there's nothing in it. Even Prime Minister Modi did not talk about his manifesto. Mr. Nadda, Mr. Amit Shah, Mr. Rajnath Singh did not talk about their manifesto. They only talked about the Congress manifesto and the promises. Why don't we discuss the BJP's manifesto? Our manifesto has certain striking features. It has captured the imagination of the youth, the unemployed, the poor, the women, and the farmers. For example, we want to write off the education loans. Now, how much does it cost to write off the education loans? A fraction of the write-off for the corporate sector. Underline my words, a fraction. You could do that in one budget speech. You reduce the corporate tax rate from 30 to 22 and write off 1,65,000 crore in the first year. But you balk when we say we will write off the education loans. That's doable. And when we wrote the manifesto, we were fully conscious that we will be the helm of power and we'll have to start implementing it in 2024.
Well, we did some calculations. The cost of writing off student loans could be upwards of 1 lakh crore rupees. The question then is, with all these write-offs, nobody will then ever want to pay their loans because they know that if...
Your numbers are wrong.
So, how much would it be according to you?
Even assuming your number is correct, 1 lakh crore is a one-time write-off, is much less than 1,65,000 crore in the first year of the corporate tax cut. It's much less than 1 year bank haircut in the IBC. Even assuming, I don't admit that 1 lakh crore.
Well, it's always fun sparring with you. The tricky thing, though, is that you can very quickly switch from your finance ministry hat to your Harvard Law School hat, and then you have to do a juggling act, and the anchor needs to cope as well. But anyway, you said that you'll do these numbers and the calculations if and when you do come to power. At least you were able to give some sense of how you saw these questions. Yes. What are you wanting to say, sir, before I wrap up?
Is helpless because you control. No anchor is helpless because you control the camera, you control the microphone. I have to try to get a short answer in your long question. Therefore, I think you've had your say and I've had my say, and let's wait for the people to decide. And if the people decide that the Congress party deserves to be in power, I will invite you for the first exclusive press conference with the ministers concerned in the Council of Ministers to answer all your questions as we roll out the programs.
Great. I look forward to that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chidambaram, for joining us. Always a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.